What? It keeps disconnecting.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll do our best. All right, we're going to get started. My name is Nate. I'm the program director here at the Down Syndrome Association. So thanks so much for coming out. Sorry about the cancellation during the polar vortex, but it's a much more beautiful day for everyone this time. So it's my pleasure to present Marjorie Hayward. She is the owner of Behavior Analysts of West Michigan. I actually used to work with her, so I have experienced this potty training and how it has been super effective. A bunch of our members go to her location and have had great success. She'll be here, we're recording it. We have materials at your tables that you can fill out throughout, kind of follow along, and those are yours to take home. If you have any questions, we'll have a Q&A at the end. So, thank you, Marjorie.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, I guess there's two, well, first let me ask just some questions. Who have children ages 0 to 4? Raise your hand. Oh. Who has children 5 to 10? All right, does anybody have anybody older than that? All right, so this program that I have been using for a number of years has been successful with children from the age of 2 all the way up. The oldest child that I've ever potty trained was 12 years old at the time, and it's been 100% successful. Sometimes we've had to do take 2 because take 1 didn't work, but we've never had to do a take 3. So take 2 has always worked for us. A little bit of my background. Currently, I am the owner of this center where we provide ABA therapy for children with the diagnosis of autism. We do have some of our clients, like Nate said, that also have Down syndrome. We also have worked with different families whose children have not had any diagnosis, but have had different issues, either with potty training or behavior. But before I did this, I was a teacher in the public school. So I taught in early childhood special education. I taught at Lincoln School for a couple of years. And I also was in the autism program. So I have kind of a variety of experiences. The video we have is of a specific guideline training, which is your very first handout. However, we have tweaked it since then, actually since Nate worked for me, and I'll talk about that after we do that. So I'm just going to start with a little bit of kind of not necessarily how to, but then there is a video that I have from when I was teaching, and the families were kind enough to give me permission to videotape so that I could share it with hundreds of other families. And this is just my contact information. I'll put it at the end too. All right, so toilet training. This is adapted from the Fox and Azrin program. They were behaviorists from the 70s, early 80s that came up with a toilet training program that they found to be very successful. And the one that I've been using is adapted from that, so it's not completely new. All right, prerequisites. Typically a 3-year-old. It doesn't really matter whether they are verbal, whether they are vocal, whether they can stay dry for hours at a time, whether they're dry overnight, whether they can tell you when their diaper is wet. None of those are prerequisites. Really just that age. I potty trained younger kids, but it's always younger than 3, but it's always been typically developing kids. So if a child has some kind of diagnosis, I would say 3 years old and you're good to go. So that's really the only prerequisite, nothing else. All right, so how it works. So this is where we're going to get to the video. Give me a second because I have to get out of here, get into the YouTube video, and get my mic on it. And this is approximately a 20-minute.
Immediately return to the spot they urinated and follow the routine again. Repeat this positive practice procedure 5 times. Use full prompting if necessary. After the 5th time, change the child into dry clothing and have the child clean the spot where the accident occurred.
Oh no.
If the child voids in the toilet during this procedure, do not give attention or praise. Continue the procedure as previously stated. Do not provide a lot of attention at this time. The positive practice procedure is not fun for the child. Okay. When beginning the program, make sure that your child is wearing regular underwear. Diapers or pillows may only be worn each night while the child is sleeping.
I don't even know where that is. going right now. All right, I'm going to go back a little bit.
Do not provide a lot of attention at this time.
I guess I'm going to hold this.
Positive practice procedure is not fun for the child. Okay.
Typically, children will have many potty accidents when you first begin this procedure. Do not get discouraged. Continue to implement the positive practice procedure.
The first time the child self-initiates, stop scheduling the child for potty time. At this point, you will not schedule them again. If you continue to schedule the child, they will become dependent on the schedule and not initiate.
Be sure to continue to fill the child's bladder with fluids. Initially, more accidents may occur. Use the positive practice procedure when this happens.
The accidents should cease within a short period of time. Usually the child will then begin to initiate frequently. If the child self-initiates one time and never initiates again, within 2 weeks start scheduling potty time again.
A request repertoire is not a prerequisite for this procedure. You should not require the child to ask for potty during training. Do not prompt them to ask for potty.
After the child has had 15 to 20 consecutive initiations with no accidents, you may stop forcing fluids.
When you are ready to try to take them to the store or other public places, use the following procedure. Fill the child's bladder before you leave, so they should need to go when you get there. Find the restroom as soon as you arrive at the store. Walk in with the child but say nothing. Walk to the stall and show them the toilet. See if they will initiate. If they do not, try minimal prompts.
Bowel training. Accidents of this type will continue to occur after the urinating is under control. Resist the temptation to put the child back in diapers. Do not use positive practice for BM accidents. Only require the child to help clean the mess. Eventually, the child will begin to use the toilet for BMs also.
Once the child is self-initiating for a period of 1 month with no accidents, you may then teach them to ask for the potty if they have not already started doing so on their own. When they are walking toward the toilet, temporarily block access to the toilet and prompt them to man, ask verbally or with sign, for the potty. Do not teach the child to man until self-initiation is strong.
We'll just go a little bit through step by step of what to get ready before you begin. You want to have a drink identified. When you're pushing to fill their bladder, you want to make sure that they're drinking much more than they usually drink. I've had parents be willing to go with soda just for toilet training because they know their child will drink limitless glasses of soda. But if your child's great with water or apple juice, I mean, just use whatever works great. As you saw with one of our clients, it was chocolate milk. He had as many chocolate milks from the cafeteria as he wanted during that week. So just make sure you have something that you know they may not satiate on, or have a few things. It doesn't have to always be the same thing. If you know they like juice, milk, water, you can kind of intersperse those. But if they're typically drinking around, I don't know, I'm going to say like 32 to 48 ounces in a day, you want to, if possible, double that so that their bladder is really full. You want to have that reinforcement identified, the one that you can use when they urinate on the toilet. You want it to be something that's highly reinforcing. You could have a couple somethings. As you can see, that first little guy didn't seem like super excited with his food items that we gave him. I think it was a chip and popcorn, and he just kind of took it. But we discovered later that day a certain video on the iPad that really excited him. So for the rest of toilet training, we used that video. And one thing that you can do is you can work on, before you start potty training, work on fading that item out for a few days. So say, for example, you decide to use M&Ms or a certain video, you want to keep that from your child for a couple of days so that they are really motivated for it. So they are denied access to it for a few days right before you start toilet training, so that it really raises up that motivation for wanting that item. You want to have bottoms that are fairly easy for them to get on and off. It's not a prerequisite that they do it themselves, but it definitely helps with their independence. You're going to have to teach that anyway. So I typically recommend to parents that they go with stretch pants or basketball shorts or something that is just leggings, something that's super easy to get up and down. I wouldn't, unless they are able to button and snap, I wouldn't recommend that you use those types of pants. Again, you want to have enough of everything, so you want to have enough underwear, you want to have enough bottoms. I would recommend 5 or 6 extra pair so that they can have, you know, accidents at first, but you're able to change them out or have them change themselves out fairly quickly. Because we are in a school setting, those kiddos had shoes on, but at the center and in the home, barefoot is fine. Then you don't have to worry about peeing in their shoes or socks or anything like that. We typically use double timers, which are almost the same price as single timers, because we're timing 2 different things. We're timing the dry checks, which is a type of reinforcement. We're reinforcing them just with verbal praise for being dry. So we're going to do that often. We'll set that timer for 5 minutes, and every 5 minutes that that timer goes off, we'll have them check their pants. You can hand over hand them. If they're dry, lots of praise. You can give them tickles. You don't want to give any kind of tangible reinforcement for this. You just want to keep it still a reinforcement, but pretty low key. And then the second timer is set for 30 minutes because we're going to use the bathroom every 30 minutes. Obviously a bathroom, child seat if necessary. We've had different, basically when I've done it, we've just kind of asked the parents. Some kiddos wanted nothing to do with that child seat. They needed a little assistance to stay on the toilet, so we'd have an adult there holding them. Some kids really only wanted to sit on that child seat. They were afraid to sit on the toilet by themselves. And we have had the occasion with some of our boys that you can get like a urine guard. I think you can get it like at Walmart or Meijer's or Target, and that just kind of sits over the toilet. I'll try to pull it up on Amazon in a minute, but it just sits over the seat of a toilet so that if it starts shooting out, then it gets stopped by that urine guard. So we found that has been necessary and helpful sometimes too. And then the data collection sheet, which we will get to. I think that sheet, I'm going to show you some data that we collected on some of our clients, but I put it in a graph, but that certainly isn't necessary. You can track just on that sheet how your child is doing. All right, so the guidelines for toilet training document. We'll start with that one. When I first started doing this, that's the only guidelines that I had, and so we used that positive practice procedure. It's considered a punishment procedure, and as you can see, especially David, it was not fun for him. He was not enjoying it. So the idea is to punish a behavior, which is urinating on the floor, with something that will make them want to not urinate on the floor anymore. And we always had success with that, but probably 9 months ago, maybe a little bit more, I met with, he's a professor at Michigan State, but he also is a BCBA, and he said, have you ever tried it without doing the positive practice? Because you don't always want to go with punishment first. You want to see if you can do it without punishment. And so we started that about 9 months ago. I'm like, yeah, let's try that. So we started that about 9 months ago. And off the top of my head, I can't remember how many clients that we've potty trained. I know it's more than 5 and probably under 10. But there's only one that we've had to use the positive practice for once we started toilet training. So you know your child, you know whether that would be necessary or not, but we'll go a little bit farther into some other guidelines where that positive practice isn't used. Other things on that guideline, if they do have an accident, you go ahead and bring them to the bathroom, but you want to keep the timer, the 30-minute timer running. So when they go to use the bathroom, when you prompt them to use the bathroom, you want to make sure it's exactly 30 minutes from the last time they got off the toilet, even if there was 1 or 2 accidents in between. You just want to have them sit on the toilet every 30 minutes. What I have tried to avoid and would recommend that you guys avoid, at least to start with, is to not have an iPad or anything that's going to entertain them while they're sitting on the toilet. You can do lots of verbal praise. Good job sitting on the toilet. I love the way you're sitting on the toilet. I'm okay with, doing songs, Baby Shark, Wheels on the Bus, but you don't want something reinforcing them just for sitting on the toilet. The only reinforcement that you want to provide, like the big bang reinforcement, is once they urinate. As far as that urination goes, I would reinforce a few drops in the toilet, if that's the first thing you get. If you get more than that, great, but that reinforcement should be, just immediate. The one thing that you do want to make sure that you do is, if there's a few drops come out, just wait a few seconds to see if more comes out before you provide that reinforcement. So make sure that you are working on them voiding their whole bladder. But if it starts out with a few drops, that's a start, and let's give them credit for that, so that they know that they're doing something good, that they're doing something right. If you have done a dry check and they're a little bit wet, and so you bring them to the bathroom and they immediately pee on the toilet, you want to reinforce them for peeing, but because they already went in their pants a little bit, you don't want it to be a big reinforcement. So it could be that you have a secondary reinforcement on the shelf, or it could just be like a verbal praise or a tickle. So just something that they know they did a good job, but it's not like the full-blown reinforcement for doing everything on the toilet. The last thing on that document, the guidelines for toilet training, is the bowel movements, and I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit. I've had 50% of my clients that bowel movement training seems to occur simultaneously. Like, he peed and he pooped on the toilet. And I've had 50% of my clients that bowel movement training took anywhere from 6 months to a year. So that can be really, really frustrating for parents where you now have this child in underwear and they're having bowel movements in that underwear, and that can be really messy. My recommendation is to buy the cheapest underwear as possible. Just dispose of them if they have that bowel movement. Have them kind of clean up themselves and with your help so that they're completely clean. And then don't really say a whole lot about it and go on from there. If you see indications, you know your children. Parents are the best teachers, the best ones that know their kids. If you know the indications of them, either a spot where they'll go in the house to have a bowel movement, or a facial feature where you know they're going to have a bowel movement, without saying anything, just take them into the bathroom, pull their pants down and sit them on the toilet. You know, maybe they've started in their pants but finished in the toilet. Man, you want to reinforce that like crazy. So if it comes to a point where, you know, you're into like a full year where they're still having bowel movement accidents, there is something, a shaping behavior that I don't have on this toilet training video, but Nate knows how to get a hold of me, or you can write down my information and you can contact me about it. So, but the bowel movements, almost every time will follow. Sometimes it takes longer than others, but the important part is not to make a big deal out of it, because you don't want constipation to occur. You don't want your child to become scared of displeasing you by pooping in their pants. So just try to be really, as hard as that may seem, try to be very non-judgmental, non-emotional about the whole thing. And if you can see those signs of when they might be starting a bowel movement, bring them to the bathroom and see if you can get the rest of it in the toilet. All right, so toilet training without using the positive practice. It's the form that has my little icon at the top, and I think it says fidelity check. Is that? Yeah, toilet training fidelity checklist. So, the positive practice is a punishment procedure. There's something called corrective feedback, and I guess in a way this is all semantics, because some people might say, if I tell my child no, then that is a punishment to them. Like, I don't want them to do that. But psychologists, or if you look in professional journals, it's not going to be considered a punishment practice. So use of corrective feedback, instead of doing that positive practice, that going back and forth to the wet accident, if your child has an accident, you can just say, no, you do not go potty on the floor, you do not go potty in your pants, or wherever it happened, and just bring them to the bathroom and change them. So you're not making a big deal out of the accidents. You can say no if you know your child and they don't really react to no. You don't have to use it. So it's really kind of up to you, but it kind of eliminates that, I've heard somebody call it shaming before. I don't want to use that word, but where you go back and forth and you are telling them, no, do not go potty on the floor, do not go potty, or you go potty in the toilet. So we're not going to do that severe punishment. We're going to use more of a corrective feedback where you just, no, you do not go potty in your pants. And then just calmly take them to the bathroom, change them, and start over. I don't want to say start over, just back to business as usual, because you still are going to use those timers. You're still going to go 5 minutes for dry checks and 30 minutes for taking to the toilet. The other thing about doing toilet training without the positive practice and using corrective feedback is if you bring them to the bathroom and set them on there while you're going to change them and they go to the bathroom, you want to make sure that you, again, provide that secondary reinforcement, whether that's tickles or praise. So you're going to add that reinforcement to those successes on the toilet, even if it's in the middle of changing them after having had an accident. So yeah, that's an example. No, you do not go potty in your pants. Just something, it doesn't have to be said in a loud voice or a stern voice. You can even just say it matter of fact. So it just lets them know that what they did was not okay. You really don't want to give any kind of feedback, like I said. You just want to take their hand, bring them to the bathroom, and help them change. Again, you want to have them do as much on their own as possible. If your child isn't good at pulling their pants up and down, and you do toilet training, they get so much practice that sometimes by the end of toilet training, they're independent with it. So that's always another good result without even meaning to have that result. And then you're going to do something that's called planned ignoring, where you're just not going to, again, say anything about it. You're just going to, you see an accident on the floor, you just take their hand, bring them to the bathroom, help them change, be as independent as possible, and then go back to whatever they were doing. All right, so that fidelity checklist, at the very end of it, we do talk to parents that if we had 3 days with no successes of urination in the toilet in all accidents, we'll ask parents, would you like us to try the positive practice procedure? So that's kind of the caveat when it comes to doing the fidelity checklist. It's really exactly the same, except you're not going to do that positive practice unless you're not having any successes after 3 days. If you choose to do the positive practice, I lost my train of thought. I'll think of it as we go on. All right, so your last sheet that you have there is data collection. You don't need to collect data on dry checks. That's just a reinforcement that you provide so that your child knows that, hey, this is a good thing that I'm staying dry. If an accident occurs, just record the date and time, and then check the box where it says accident. You still want to keep that 30-minute timer going if it hasn't gone off. Let's say that timer goes off right in the middle of the accident, or you go to check them and they've had an accident, and that 30-minute timer goes off. I would say take them to the bathroom, take their wet stuff off, put some dry stuff on, leave the bathroom for a second, 5 seconds, and then say, hey, let's try and go to the bathroom, and bring them in. Just so there's a definite split into this accident and being asked to go to the bathroom. So you just kind of want to make a break in that. I remembered what I was going to say about the positive practice. When our clients and or my students, when they had accidents on the floor or on a chair or whatever, I would have another adult clean it up and just pour water. So they're not, if they're touching their pants, it's going to be urine soaked, but the floor is not a pile of urine, it's a pile of water. So they're not like putting their hands in urine, it's just water. If it's just you there, which I've had happen to me a couple times, I'll just make a little, half cup of water away from the spot and have them touch that, and then when I can later go clean up that spot. I do. Alright, so after they've been sitting on the toilet for 5 to 6 minutes, I know in the guidelines it says like 5 to 8 minutes, I recommend 5 to 6 minutes. If you start finding that your child starts peeing at 6 minutes every time, then you might want to stay a little longer, which is the wonder of that data collection page, is it just gives you an idea of watching how long it takes them to actually urinate in the toilet. So if after sitting on the toilet for 5 to 6 minutes or anywhere in between and urination occurs, make sure you put the time and the date on the box or on the data sheet and check the urination box. So you're going to, again, track when that urination occurred. And then if urination does not occur in that 5 to 6 minutes, record the time at the end of when you ask your child to get up, just record the time of when that was, and then check the box that they did not go. So there's a front and back, or there should be a front and back. Nope, it's only on the front. But I can, well, Nate has it.
And we'll have them available online so you can download them
Yeah.
as you need more.
Yeah, because a sheet like that is probably good for about 2 or 3 days, depending on how many accidents they have or how many times they urinated. So sometimes you might be taking data on multiple sheets. What's the word I want to use? I guess the beauty of the data sheet is you can kind of start tracking of when your child is going to the bathroom. And so if you see, oh yeah, after I give them a glass of juice or whatever, I notice that they're either having an accident or they're going on the toilet because I prompted them to go on like a half hour after they have that drink. And so that helps you to keep track of maybe maybe their timer that is set for 30 minutes, it's going to be like 40 minutes after they had their drink, maybe I'm going to put them on at 30 minutes after their drink. So it just gives you an eyes on where you can kind of adjust. So like I said, those timers are not set in stone. They're like a good guideline, but feel free to do, dry checks every 6 to 7 minutes or every 10 minutes. And if you're finding your child's having accidents like every 25 minutes, set the timer for 20 minutes so that they have a chance to be successful. So feel free to play with that, and those data sheets just are really good indications or a really good help with that. The one thing that I also want to point out is when a child self-initiates. So on the video, that little one just ran into the bathroom, said I have to go potty, turned the light on, and went. That is not necessarily always the case for self-initiation. Self-initiation can look very, very different for a child. It could be something as extravagant as the potty dance. We probably have all seen that before. And so if you see your child that you're potty training do the potty dance, that's enough of a self-initiation to say, let's go in the potty and go. They successfully go, lots of praise. If they, are grabbing themselves or holding themselves, that's another self-initiation. Another time where they might not be in the bathroom, but you could say, oh, it looks like you have to go potty, let's go potty. Bring them into the bathroom, pull down their pants, and once they're successful peeing, provide that big reinforcement. So self-initiation can also look like where they just go and stand by the door of the bathroom. That's another indication that they know where they need to be. You bring them in there and they go. And again, you provide that huge reinforcement. So that self-initiation can look very, very, very different. Once that self-initiation does occur, in a way, it's a wonderful thing because then you can just throw the timer out, which if you decide to do this potty training and you set aside 3 or 4 days to do it, by the end of the first day, you're pretty sick of the timer, I promise you. So you'll be ready to get rid of it as much as they are. If you're not doing that positive practice, you stop timing, you're still going to force fluids because you still want them to have a lot of practice of going on the toilet. You're going to have to watch for their self-initiation cues again. So it might be that they don't run into the bathroom. It might be that they do the potty dance every time. So you want to make sure you're pretty aware of that. I will, especially if I have a child that's vocal and I see them do the potty dance, I'll grab their hand and I'll say, oh, tell me you have to go potty. And they say it, okay, let's go potty. So self-initiation doesn't have to have them independently going into the bathroom. That's where we want to get to. But it could, like I said, it could be just very different indications. We had one kiddo that we actually put a PACS picture. Actually, I think that PACS picture was on the outside of the bathroom for another client, and we were potty training him. And he went up and just started pointing at that picture. He had no PACS training or anything like that. PACS is, Picture Exchange Communication System. It's just a variety of pictures that non-vocal kids can use to tell us their wants and needs. So they can be, pictures of toilets or pictures of food, but we had a picture of a toilet outside of the bathroom. So he went up and just tapped it, brought him in. He went right away, he got lots of reinforcement, and that's honestly still the same way that he tells us he has to go. He just goes up and touches that picture. But now at this point we could say, okay, go on in and go, and he does it completely independently. So like I said, self-initiation can look very, very different, and you just have to kind of watch your child's cues. And once that's occurring, you can stop all the timers, continue to push fluids. If you haven't started doing that positive practice, if you're just doing corrective feedback or nothing at all, continue with that. If you're using positive practice and they have an accident, you can use positive practice for that. So accidents, quite often, once they self-initiate, spike for a while. It's called an extinction burst. It's almost like they're trying to say to you, oh, let's give this one more shot and see if I can get back in my diapers. And if you just stay strong and say, oh, no, don't go potty on the floor, let's go in the bathroom and go, and take them in there and go, you'll see the accidents decrease fairly quickly. As far as when you are out in public, I recommend, if you're going to do this program, that you kind of clear your calendar as much as you possibly can and not go anywhere with your child during that time. Until they're, successfully peeing on the toilet and having 0 accidents, I would say try to stay close to home or relatives or whatever, somewhere where, if an accident occurs, one, your child's not gonna be too upset about it, and two, the place you're at is not gonna be too upset about it. If you have been having successes, you want to go to Myers, bring them to the bathroom as soon as you get there, and prompt them to go into the stall. If they start pulling their pants down, sit them on. If they just look at you and say, or if they're verbal and say, I don't have to go, that's fine too. But anytime you're heading to public places after they've been toilet trained, you just want to offer them where the toilet is. When you are reinforcing for potty training, you can slowly fade that. So let's say you've had 15 to 20 consecutive successes on the toilet. That's really when you can start providing that reinforcement, every 2 times, every 3 times, every 5 times, and just slowly pull back from providing those reinforcements. The other thing you can do is, if you've taken that reinforcement away during other times of their life and you want to put it back in, like if it's, watching the video while eating a snack or whatever, feel free to do that too. So you don't have to feel like for the rest of my life I have to give my child a Cheerio or an M&M for peeing on the toilet. You don't. You don't have to say Baby Shark on the iPad for only peeing on the toilet. So again, that reinforcement, you can just fade those away. And it's still, you can still use that verbal praise for a while. Good job, you peed on the toilet. You could kind of hear the excitement in my voice. We had a client that it took him a while before the first time he peed, and we were all so excited that we're jumping up and down, and he just started bawling. We scared him so bad. We felt so bad. So from then on, it was a very quiet, whispered praise for peeing on the toilet. So again, you guys know your child better than anybody else, so you'll know what's reinforcing to them and what is not. All right, I'm going to show you, Nate, I thought this was going to take a little bit longer. I'm going to show you a couple data collections that I have taken from those forms and put them into graphs. And so you can kind of see where our success lies. So this was a 4-year-old, and on day 1, he was wet 3 times, he urinated 4 times, but he didn't go 9 times. So we continued. I just have these all out through day 8, even though some of them stopped having accidents like at day 4. But what you want to see in your data is you're going to see so many more checks in your urinated boxes and no checks in your wet box, and just a 0 to minimal in your didn't go box. I would continue collecting data for a few days even after the first day they self-initiated, just so that you can track and make sure the accidents aren't really going higher. So this was a 4-year-old, and he obviously caught on pretty quickly. By day 4, he was having 0 accidents. So this was a 7-year-old, and he started out just not having any successful urinations at all, and lots of accidents, but we just kept with it, and as you can see, he eventually was having 0 accidents and urinating on the toilet. And I wish I had tracked the day that they self-initiated. I didn't, unfortunately, but each one of these did self-initiate. I'm going to go back to that self-initiating in a minute, but again, this is on in an Excel spreadsheet, so it's pretty simple to do if you're familiar with Excel and if you want to graph your kids' toileting success. It's actually kind of fun. And this was our 12-year-old, and what was, I'll never forget this one, because she just would, if you put water in front of her, she would drink it. And so that first day, she probably had 132 ounces of water within 2 hours. Like, she just kept drinking and drinking. And she, didn't go so many times, but the times that she did, it was like a flood. It was like, oh my word, that was a lot. So, a caveat to that is, yes, push fluids, but the second day we didn't push near as many fluids. I was just like, holy cow, she is just having no problem filling her bladder. But she also had problems emptying it on the toilet. So hers was a little bit more up and down, but yeah, by day 7, she was at 0 accidents. And I think I'm going to bring the self-initiation up with this one, because she actually never self-initiated it, but she was holding it, and we started increasing our timer to like 40 minutes to an hour before we were having her go to the bathroom. And at the age of 12, being potty trained at the age of 12, I think it is safe to say that she was pretty low functioning, and so she will never be living independently in a home by herself. She'll probably always be in a group home, and she'll tell you, like, you could say, do you have to go to the bathroom? And she'll shake her head, yes or no, but she won't go on her own. So we just came to the point where if she doesn't self-initiate, that's okay, because there'll always be an adult with her that can ask her if she has to go. And also in the school setting at the time, it's pretty common in the school setting where kids are given set times to go to the bathroom. If they're in like a self-contained classroom, the teachers, set a time where they prompt all the kids to go to the bathroom, or if they're in a more gen ed setting, the teachers will say, okay, whoever has to go to the bathroom, let's line up at the door and go out to the hallway. So in some ways, self-initiation, especially at school or even at first, is not as important as them being able to hold their urine and go when they're prompted. So if you get to day 7, day 8, they're not having any accidents, they're going every time that you schedule them to go to the bathroom, you can increase that schedule time, and you can even start asking, do you have to go to the bathroom? If they say yes, you could say, tell me potty, or show me potty, and then take them. So you can still kind of encourage that self-initiation, but don't be discouraged if it doesn't happen. As long as they are able to stay dry for long periods of time, and there's an adult around that will always ask them or prompt them to go to the bathroom, you can do that. All right, I went through this fairly fast, but I wonder if our question and answer time might take up quite a bit of time. So, I'm ready for any questions. Yes?
What do you do with a child that doesn't want to go? That doesn't want to go into the bathroom when it's time to go in?
So, that's a really good question. If you want to potty train, you might have to do some other training before you potty train. So, if there's Again, I'm just gonna go with iPad videos because I feel like that's a thing these days and can be really reinforcing for a lot of kids. It could be that time on the iPad takes place in the bathroom, so the bathroom becomes reinforcing. Or it could be favorite toys are in the bathroom, so that they don't have to do anything but hang out and have fun in the bathroom. And the bathroom is just a fun place to be.
What about if you're going into the bathroom and you have them come in and sit on the little potty?
Yeah.
If you're on the big potty.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
that's a very...
And is there any preference or suggested method of a sit on the seat or a potty chair?
Nope, whatever is preferred by you or your child. The one thing that is recommended for boys is to sit at first. I have a really good friend who's an adult, and his mom just said, no, there's no reason that guys have to stand to pee, so as an adult he still sits on the toilet to pee. So, which is kind of weird in thinking, but it's also not a big deal, you know? We've actually never really worked on our clients to stand. Parents may have home, and so they come, you know, they're toilet trained and they come in and stand to pee, but we haven't really pushed that so much. So it's really kind of a preference thing. Yes.
So back to like the little, you know, floor potty or seat on the regular potty. Do you ever worry about them not wanting to go on the actual potty with a potty seat and having to break that habit?
That is absolutely could be an occurrence that happens. And then it's gonna go back to, I'm calling it reinforcement. It's providing something that they really like for doing something that you want them to do. I've heard it sometimes called Grandma's Law. If you eat your vegetables, then you can have dessert. So it's kind of like that, you know. If you sit on this big potty, then you can look at the iPad for a couple minutes. So there's always, if you're transitioning them from one thing, either if it's from outside the bathroom to in the bathroom, or if it's from the little potty chair to the big potty chair, you always want to make what you want them to go to much more fun and exciting than what they are comfortable with doing. And that is almost always with external items. And again, you don't want to keep using those external items forever and ever, but it's a good way to start.
Have you ever worked, I swear, my kid probably needs ABA. So he can go, but he'll purposely hold it back too. So like if we go to a public place, it's like potty, 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 and then he'll go a little tiny bit. Like, can you go all the way? And then we'll go back, sit down at the table, potty, potty, potty. Like he can start, stop, hold, leave, and come. Is that? He does that every night too. And then there have been times where I'm like, no, you already went potty, and then he's like, potty, and so then I take off and he goes, and then I feel like a terrible mom.
Yeah.
But you know, like.
Yep. So, you know, take them for potty, potty, potty. He goes a little bit, he gets nothing. Take him back. He says, potty, potty, potty. You say no. He says, potty, potty, potty. You take him, and he goes a lot, and then you
Reinforce. Okay.
yeah, just hit him with those reinforcements.
I said you can hold it, he'll go when you ask him to go, we don't just follow it slow. So I feel like if we started with every 30 minutes, we'd be going backwards a little bit because he can hold for hours. But, or do I start all over again because I'm putting you in underwear now?
You know, with that scenario, I would put him in underwear, and I would probably do like a 40 to 50 minute, or if you know how often he's going, then that's when I would schedule him.
Just stretch out this
So just stretch out the time a little bit more.
Okay.
If he's verbal, if he's vocal, you can even, you know, hey, I'm gonna take you potty now, tell me I have to go potty. Bring him in there. It's really, with this potty training, it's all about that reinforcement when they go on the toilet. Yeah. And it sounds like he would probably be so fast. But you have to realize you're gonna have to put up with urine accidents.
Do we do, like, if he has an accident in his underwear, like, right now, what do we do? Like, we don't, I don't wanna shame him.
Right, exactly. So you could do something as simple as just ignoring, like you see that he's wet, you just take his hand, bring him into the bathroom, change him, you know, talk about this is where you go potty, don't go potty on the floor. So you can use just a very non-emotional voice, or, you know, you could do that with the accident too, like, oh no, you went potty on the floor, you should go in the bathroom. So it doesn't, that shaming is definitely like how you use your voice, right?
I just don't want him to feel bad. It's
Right,
like,
right.
bad.
Right.
We try not to.
Right, yeah, so just, you know, you could even use the no word, but say it in a way, say it in a way that is not forceful.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have a question?
How do you know, like, when they're ready to start potty training? Like, is there...
3 years old.
Okay,
For
so
all
no
time.
matter what, how they are,
Nope.
any function, 3 years old, they
Yep.
can start.
Yep.
Okay.
And that's just really the age of typically developing kids are ready. I think kids with any kind of impairment are ready at 3 years old.
Do you have any suggestions for how to prep the child, like talking about it or explaining what we're gonna do, or is it like the day you're gonna start, then you explain it to them?
It's really kind of up to you. There's just a ton of really cool potty books that you can read. So if you want to prep them, you can by just reading those potty books. But I probably wouldn't like do a countdown and say like, oh, you know, on Saturday we're going to start using underwear. That would probably just be, you know, like talk about it in the book. Oh, you know, this is great. That'll be great if you go potty, you know. So yeah, definitely just the day of. And I know we had some clients that putting underwear on was really hard. So we were going to start potty training, and we had to desensitize them to wearing underwear. So we didn't start potty training the day we were going to. It was more we spent that day, you know, that underwear sits on their legs. Good job letting that underwear sit on your legs, you know. So just desensitizing them to, and it was pretty bad. Like they were pretty scared of it. If it's just a little bit fighting and, you know, like, what is this? What is this? But you can get them up and they're not pulling him off, then you're good to go. But this was a pretty severe reaction to that underwear. So if there's going to be just a little bit, like, you know, what is this? I recommend if they have, you know, any kind of favorite character. My granddaughter loves Paw Patrol, but her favorite is Marshall. There is no girl underwear with Marshall on it, so she started in boy underwear because that was like her jam. So come up with a jam with that underwear, like what's the favorite kind of thing. You would go for you.
So in terms of the beverages, finding something they like, we try to avoid soda as a general rule.
Mm-hmm.
If for whatever reason that's what gets her to drink, then hey, I'll wait for a whole day, a couple days.
Yes.
Caffeine, no caffeine? Is
I
it
tried.
better no caffeine?
Yeah, I
Because
tried
you want
to.
that natural urge instead of the artificial diuretic?
Yep, exactly. We did a client that his only thing that he would drink a lot of was the orange drink from McDonald's. So exactly. So we were doing McDonald's runs a couple times a day. And we tried like putting orange pop in a McDonald's cup, and that wasn't it. So yeah. And luckily he was fairly quick. Like like it was 4 days and we could get rid of it.
So what time in the evening do you recommend to taper back the fluids then for night, or do they
Oh,
just
that's
drink up
a
until?
great question. No, I would probably, 2.5 to 3 hours before bedtime. Again, this is kind of a recommendation, but I know it might not be life available, is you don't want to put pull-ups back on for anything. So, don't plan like a 3-hour trip where you don't want to have accidents in your back seat. You don't want to, I know that for our families, because we're doing potty training at the center and then they have to drive home, that was like one of the biggest pushbacks, was like, I don't want him in the car. So we got a bunch of those blue things that you get from the at the hospital and just kind of wrap the kid in their car seat because they had to go home, right? So, but if you can stay home and do it, pull-ups should only be for nap times if they're still napping, and then bedtime. And we had somebody that says, oh, we typically take a bath right after supper, put a pull-up on, and then they go to bed at 8, and I just said, could you please put them in underwear until 8, and then put the pull-up back on, because you just want to be catching those accidents every time they happen.
Lisa wonders if you have any advice for a 4-year-old nonverbal boy who will sometimes hold his urine for up to 8 hours.
I would say that if fluids are being pushed at a rate of twice of what they typically drink, that they're not. I mean, it's a bodily function that is going to occur. It will occur. I know that seems hard or harsh, but we've had parents that say, oh, my child will go all day without having an accident, but you push enough drink, it will come out. Yeah.
Then with the nighttime train, does it eventually just happen?
Yep, it sure does. It sure does. And I usually recommend to parents, if you have 5 days in a row of waking up dry, then no more diapers. We actually had a client that she would stay dry all night long, but she was still in diapers during the day. So when we started potty training, I said to Mom, it's up to you, but you've had like months of no accidents at night. Just leave her in underwear. And she still had accidents during the day during potty training, but never had an accident at night. So.
Our son is 3.5, and his bowel movements are always every morning, like as soon as he wakes up. So, do you think that's going to be an issue?
Leave it on until he has one.
Okay, does that mean it's probably going to take him a long time to figure out that part of it?
I mean, if he's up and having that bowel movement,
like before we get him up.
Before you get up, yeah, it might take a while, or it actually might just. I wish I had some data, I wish I had some articles as to why some kids, that bowel movement just moves simultaneously with the urine training, and why some kids it does not, but nobody has that yet.
Is it like, should we put a potty seat in his room so if he decides he wants
I mean,
to
you
try
could.
to do that?
Yeah, absolutely, that's not gonna hurt. Or, if you're pretty sure of, like, he starts yelling at 6:30 in the morning or whatever, and so you go in and he's pooped, maybe you can wake up at 6 or 5:45, wake him up, put him on the toilet before the bowel movement happens. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Where you try to catch it before it happens and then have him go on the toilet. But don't worry about that yet.
What about kids who are tube-fed or G-tube? So still increase the fluids?
Mm-hmm.
Because mine eats meals every day, but she still gets a couple feeds a day because she just doesn't drink enough.
Okay. I would still try to push the fluids this way, but you can push them
make sure it's okay with her doctor. But yes, you could definitely push them that way too. Okay. I would try to do it that way. Okay. That was a really good question.
So our daughter is a little unique in that she has a syncostomy tube, so we use that to flush her every day for colon.
Okay.
So she sits on the potty every morning for an hour, and we have a special potty seat that she sits on the big toilet.
Okay.
I know she will not feel comfortable climbing onto the big toilet herself.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any suggestions on how we separate the flush time?
Sure.
And then the potty training time for each of them?
Yeah.
She only, it works so that she's clear all day. She generally, unless she's sick or couldn't be ready, she doesn't see it any other time.
Okay. Get a little potty chair so that there's definitely different. One that she can sit on herself, and then, like I said, dated to that toilet. My granddaughter is 5.5 now, and she still prefers, she's not in school, her mom homeschools her, and she still prefers her little potty chair. She's perfectly capable of climbing on a big toilet, and, you know, at Grandma and Grandpa's house, that's what she does, but at home, she would just much rather use that little potty chair. So, she's a peanut too, she's not a big 5-year-old. So that
Heidi,
helps,
could you
but-
separate out bathrooms? Like,
Oh, that's,
flush goes, you know, we always do our flush in this one, and we train in this one.
yeah, that's an option too, that's a good.
Yeah, that's, but yes, thank you.
Yes.
How do you make it work with school? Like, so,
If you have the answer to that, tell me, because
like, I mean,
I have
even
not
with like
had-
the bowel movements and stuff, it's like, I don't know.
I have not had success with schools. It's, when it comes to that, it almost has to happen during a period of time when they're not in school. So, if they're going to school year-round, I know they have a few weeks off in the summer, or if you want to do it at Christmas time, but basically, they leave school in diapers and they come back in underwear. And if you have that data that shows, hey, she hasn't had any accidents, you know, for 8 days now, she's going to the bathroom at these times during the day, she's not telling me she has to go, but I put her on and she goes, she's had 0 accidents, can you do the same? There may, depending on her teacher, there may be pushback on that, but I usually go with that, can you at least try it for a week and show me that? I've even given like them the data sheet and said, and then you can keep data and let me know. And sometimes that keeping data themselves is, kind of becomes a buy-in. So, but I have done kids on weekends, some older kids on weekends, and then had, you know, I usually try to talk with the teacher beforehand and say, hey, we're doing this, can you please continue it? And some teachers have been, nobody's been like, yeah, we'll do it. Mostly it's been, we'll see. So, unfortunately, that's where schools are at. Yeah, way back there.
How can siblings help or be involved in a positive way?
Oh, that's a great question. So, they could be the one that provides the reinforcement for when they go potty. They could maybe even be like a little cheerleader while they're in the bathroom. Again, anything can go on during the bathroom while they're sitting and waiting, as long as it's not something that is like super reinforcing, like the iPad, or like you're just giving them potato chip after potato chip. You can do lots of praise. I love the way you're sitting on the toilet. Wow, you're such a big boy. You're such a big girl sitting on that toilet. If they seem to be getting a little antsy about it, you know, I'd say, oh, you know, you go potty on the toilet, you'll be all done. and then just try to distract them with games or something. So, read them the potty. I'm just great with reading them a potty book while sitting on the potty. I don't know if you heard, Bryce said something about he wanted a Scooby-Doo book, which was super reinforcing. You know, I want my Scooby-Doo book. And you're not going to have it while you're sitting on the toilet. You can have it once you go to the toilet. So I try to avoid as much as possible during that time where you're waiting them to void to provide anything that's like super, super reinforcing. It's more like you're providing distractors to keep them from becoming upset for sitting on the toilet for so long. And it might be hard at first, but some kids, they don't really care at all. But it might be hard at first, but I find quickly they're just like, oh, this is what I do. So some of them, I've seen like no indication that they know they're going, and I've seen other ones that are just like, you know. So if they don't show an indication that they know they're going potty, then your indication of providing the reinforcement immediately is their indication.
I have another sibling question. We have, so our boy with Down syndrome is 3.5, and then we have twin boys that are 2.5. So trying to decide what order we potty train in, and if, like, is it better for our son with Down syndrome to have a model of the other two training, or just go with training our older one, and the other two might catch on because they see us doing it so much?
I would go with the latter one, where you go oldest to youngest and see if those other two catch on to it. They might. You never know. Yes.
Our son tells us he has to go to the bathroom probably 15 times a day, but he never does. He just wants to go in, sit on the potty, take the toilet paper off, flush, and wait. Do we let him continue to tell us he needs to go and bring him in every time in addition to the schedule, or just try and tell him?
Yeah, really good question. So, one thing is I would take the toilet paper roll off, like kind of sanitize the bathroom. You obviously can't like take the handle off, but I would stand there or attempt to block it. And if he's asking to go to the bathroom and he never goes, there's obviously a disconnect between what he's saying and what's actually happening in there. So I would completely ignore his comments and then just do the scheduling. Once he's had a couple successes on the toilet, if he's still saying, I have to go to, potty, or I want to go in the potty, say, oh, if you go in the potty, you need to pee in the toilet, and then you'll get. So you're going to have to train him to understand that when I say I have to go potty, or I'm going to go in the bathroom, that it actually means pee. Or you could like completely 360 him and have him like, I want to go potty, and not take him in there, and have a different language for going in there. So not necessarily vulgar, but pretty graphic, like, I want to go pee, or something like that, so that he has a completely different language for when he actually urinates in the toilet. And that way you can differentiate from him saying, I want to go potty, to him actually having to urinate.
Dawn has a 7-year-old son who is nonverbal, and he has 1 to 2 loose bowel movements a day, but at various times and without inconsistency. She's wondering if you have any suggestions on how she can work with that.
Can you ask her if he's urine trained?
Absolutely.
Yet? And then I can let you know.
My granddaughter, her daughter, still gets an evening bottle. What are your suggestions as far as, I mean, she's just 3, but as far as, should that bottle go before we start the potty training?
I don't think it has to go before you start the potty training, but I would encourage it to go soon. So just whether it's, putting less and less in that bottle, if it's something different than water,
only water is given in a bottle, but no, I don't think, because I don't think she'll be dry in overnight very quickly if she stays on that bottle. I don't know how much is in it, but yeah, I would just kind of, I don't think, I have a 3-year-old granddaughter also who still has a bottle, and she's been potty trained for, at least during the day, for about 6 months now.
Yeah, she only gets it in the evening.
Yeah, yep, yeah. I just encourage you to change up that bottle. Yeah, as much as you can.
She said he's not urine trained yet.
Yeah. So typically, like I said, those bowel movements can follow the urine training, so that would be my first suggestion, is go for the urine training. The bowels could very well follow. If they don't, then she can, you know, again, if there's indications when he's having those, when he's going to have a bowel movement, to, you know, rush him into the bathroom and set him on the toilet. So a lot of times urine training, bowel training will follow pretty quickly. Well, 50% of the time, so I'm not gonna say a lot. 50-50. Yes?
So our first son is typical. We did elimination communication, or communication elimination, I get it confused method with him. It was really successful. He was trained like around 2-ish, 2.5.
Okay.
And so we've been starting that with the Hudson. Our second was 1.5. In a less aggressive way, obviously. When he shows us signs he needs to poop, we put him on the potty. Sometimes he does, he doesn't. If when we transition, when he's 3, to this method, will that work we're doing now be confusing?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. I would continue with what you're doing with that for sure.
Okay.
Yep, yep. I think it actually might increase the time of his toilet training. Go for it.
Thanks.
Did you say there was like a urine guard or something for boys?
Yes. Well, let me quick find that. So yeah, it looks, I don't know if you can see that. Yeah. I don't know if you can see that up there. Oh, can you turn the lights off real quick?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it just kind of slips over the front of the seat. I don't even know arthritis supplies, but I know we got ours from Amazon, so $10. Urine splash guard. Yep, and it just slides right over a regular toilet.
Any recommendations for best cleanup methods or strategies?
Well, I'm kind of a green girl, so I like the Green Works, where it's just like a multi-surface disinfectant. I will typically...
No newspaper, just the newspaper.
I will typically dilute it and like soak all that up and then spray that on there. But yeah, I don't have any great. I just know that when we're doing potty training in a room at our center, like we have beanbag chairs, we have like puffy chairs, we just have a lot of things that can soak up a lot of urine. So we'll typically move those out of the space and just try to keep things that are, you know, I've had a parent say, can I just plastic wrap the couch for a while? I'm like, go for it. I mean, I honestly, what's gonna work for you is fine. So I know for, yeah, We had a mom that was very concerning for her, was peeing. And I get it, she had just gotten all new furniture, so but maybe now's not the time, or maybe that's not the room to do it in. Are there other rooms that are available that they enjoy being in and just off limits that room for a while?
I think next time this presentation could be brought to you by the little spot bomb
Yeah.
whistle. Potentially look at that next.
I've got lots of extra blue medical pads.
Yes.
Our son does pee standing up most of the time. So
Already?
is
Go
that,
for it.
okay.
No, there's
So we
no
don't have to
reason.
go back to
Nope,
sitting down?
nope, sure don't.
Okay.
Sure don't. Love to stand up. Yeah.
Sure, mom loves it too.
I was gonna say, the question is he successful?
I keep a roll of paper towel like nearby. Complain a lot.
Who's gonna start this in 2 weeks? Spring break. All right, who thinks summertime will be a good time to do this? I don't disagree with that. The thing with summertime, which is great, especially when you're doing those dry checks, is that you can just be outside, playing in the backyard. The one thing that I would recommend not doing is allowing them to pee outside. That can become very confusing. So, if they have the accident outside, make sure they know to go. Wait for that peeing against the tree like 4 or 5 years after their potty training.
No, they become a 40-year-old, that's still. It's sad, it's tragic.
Yeah, and make sure grandpas who might get a kick out of that, it's not okay. Not yet. So the one thing, again, if you're going to do it outside, and let's say they've self-initiated, so you're not doing dry checks anymore, you're going to want to keep an eye on that little area so that if you see it's wet, that you can do, you know, whether you're doing the positive practice or whether you're doing corrective feedback or whether you're just saying, oh, look, you had an accident. You need to go potty in the toilet. Let's go. So I know that dark colored basketball shorts, like you can see nothing on that. They could be drenched and you would not know it. So I recommend like light colored cotton because you can see that accident very quickly. And we, which reminds me, we had a client that was self-initiating, but it was always after there was like a quarter size spot in his pants, you could see it. So we just started, again, we were still tracking it, and we're like, oh, he's self-initiating about like every 45 to 50 minutes. So we would ask him at 40 minutes, hey, let's just try and go potty to avoid having that accident. And I wasn't really calling that an accident when it did happen. I would just say, oh, it looks like you have to go potty, let's go. And you know, and just kind of talk about, oh, we want to keep our pants dry, now we have to change them, not make a big deal out of it. And eventually that will go away. I will promise you, especially if you do a spring break potty training and it's successful, once summer comes, a lot more accidents are going to happen just because they're going to be outside playing. Even if you potty train in the summer, next summer comes around, you might see accidents again, especially when they're playing outside. They'll just get too busy. You guys have had a lot of really good questions, so I'm going to pull up my contact information one more time, and then the phone number is actually my work number, but you can easily get a hold of me there, and then email is the best way to get a hold of me. I answer usually within 24 hours. Potty training questions I like to answer a lot quicker. That's my thing. it's nighttime.
Currently petrified of a nap on the way home from daycare.
I hear ya. Yep, and we've had parents, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't like it, but I did put, like, kids that were completely potty trained, and parents are like, they're gonna fall asleep, they're gonna have an accident, and so we put them in pull-ups before they went home. Especially if home was like, you know, a half hour away, and then they don't wake up for another, but I asked them to like keep track of when that pull-up was dry, and once it's dry for 4 or 5 days in a row, then you have to like, let go. Just have to do it. But if you can avoid putting that on, wrap them up in those blue things.
Since we're not gonna start for Miss Fiona until the summer, would it be, like, now she shows interest in, well, I can't get out of her sight, so she goes into the bathroom with me whenever I go, her and the dog. So, would it be okay to put a pull-up on her now throughout the day, since we're not really starting it, and just letting her do her potty thing, that it's easier to take on and off?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very okay. Yeah, and if she has successes, you know, provide that reinforcement, little pep talk. Absolutely.
I look at her because she buys them, she's buying them,
Yeah.
so.
I have, speaking of pull-ups, I have had some parents who have talked about, oh, my kid just will not put underwear on. And so if we know that ahead of time, as opposed to that one little guy that we had no idea, I would recommend just putting the pull-up on and then underwear over it. So they just get used to that underwear, and then when it comes to potty training, it's just no pull-up, just the underwear. So that's another way to kind of get them ready before you're ready to start. If you're afraid that underwear is going to be a block or a barrier to potty training. All right, getting me out early, so I must be a really good teacher.
Awesome, and if you guys have more questions, you can feel free to email me if you use her contact info. I'll make sure to email everyone the copies of the papers, so especially so you can have extra data sheets to print out. So if you don't hear from me, if you weren't on the original email list, it's just nate@psawm.org. So, thanks for coming, everyone. I think we have extra pizza, so if you have other siblings, feel free to bring some home. And yeah, thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Good Marjorie.